Alright, so the Duelist Cup is coming up, and for those of you who still want to play this format and still want to play in the Duelist Cup, let's do a tier list for the best decks to play for this Duelist Cup format. So we have a SS tier or Malice tier, which I mean you could probably guess what goes in here. We got tier 2, tier 3 Rogue, and then do level 19, or this is what I put as decks that you may struggle to get to D level 20 with, and may struggle to get to stage 2 with. At least early on, when everyone is still playing, you can maybe have a better time if you just wait a few days for like all the sweats like yours truly to get to D level 20 first, and then just farm all the kids still left in the first stage. But yeah, so top deck Malice, like we got a new pack, so we're gonna discuss a bunch of new cards from the new pack as well. But I mean, like it's very obvious that Malice is like the best deck right now. There's really not much to say about it. Like if you've been playing Master Duel at all, you'll understand. And also like the fact that we got backup Ad Ignister and the Ad Ignister support. While mind you, Riseio still does not have Eclipse Twins, which well, I guess we'll get to that later. But yeah, I think Malice is probably the clear best deck right now. It has like two weaknesses, which is like Maxi and Lancia, and backup Ad Ignister somewhat even addresses the Lancia weakness, because if you hard open backup Ad Ignister, you can still end on like 2 to 3 interruptions through a Lancia, when before Lancia was like the only hand shot that forced you to really hard pass and in on nothing, and that's not even the case anymore. You still end on something through a Lancia, which is exactly what the deck needed, right? The best deck needed a way to play through its weaknesses, totally, right, Konami? But yeah, this is also because of the Malice being the best deck and being the most represented deck, there's going to be a lot of Lancia going around, and Lancia is going to also like affect the format based on if your deck, based on how much the deck that you play gets hurt by Lancia too. So that's just the side effect of having Malice as the best deck. But yeah, speaking of the backup Ad Ignister cards, like there are other Cybers decks besides Malice, in Master Duel, and like backup Ad Ignister is basically a buff to every single Cybers deck in the game. Even if they're not as good as Malice, we still have Mathmech, Circular is still at 3, we still Link Decoder still exists, and so on and so forth. So like if you want to play a Cybers deck that's not Malice, like the backup Ad Ignister is good. Like it's basically the best extender it's the best Cybers extender, like just full stop. It gets you like three bodies. Backup Ad Wizard, Revive a body, like that's insane. That's like full Cybers combo plus like you can literally do whatever the hell you want if you resolve backup Ad Ignister. And it's also searchable via Cybers Wickets, which is very easy to make. So like it's just disgusting. Like yeah, if you're not a fan of Cybers, like this is, I can see how you would be really tilted by the new pack, because that's just because yeah, the backup Ad Ignister just buffs every Cybers deck immensely, even Mathmech. Although I'm not sure, like obviously Mathmech is way worse than Malice. Like clearly, like why would you play Mathmech over Malice in the first place? Like there's like no reason to actually play Mathmech over Malice. Even the Maxi argument, or not the Maxi argument, it's even like the Lancian argument is not that. But like again, because of the existence of backup Ad Ignister, Malice having lines to play through lines to play through Lancia. Sorry, my bad. I keep getting the two mixed up. But yeah, being able to play through Lancia means that that's the only advantage that other Cybers decks have over Malice, which is like them not dying to Lancia as hard. And even then, it's like not even that much anymore. And I will say that the existence of backup Ad Ignister lets you drop Small World now, which is like, Lancia format, Small World can sometimes be a liability, especially when the rest of your deck doesn't care about Lancia. So having one starter randomly get hit by Lancia is like not ideal. So backup Ad Ignister, if you resolve it, it's still a full Mathmech combo. Like you literally can just make Alan Version off the Wizard and the body it revives. So it's it's pretty free. There's like you don't have to run other. It can replace other starters in your deck now, like Small World. And backup Ad Ignister also, fun fact, backup Ad Ignister is actually part of its own archetype. Like it's not just generic Cyber support that's used in like Malice and Mathmech slop. Like it is part of an Ad Ignister archetype, which Ad Ignister now is like kind of it is the quintessential Cyber deck. It is Ad Ignister is like the final end game of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Cyber deck, because the deck is just it has probably the longest turns in the entire game, arguable you know, it's up there, and it has the most disgusting one card combos. The Adagnister one card combo is actually way worse, and like way by worse I mean it feels way worse to sit through than like a Malice combo, because the one Adagnister monster, okay, one Achichi, one Pikari gets you a full extra link with 3 Firewall link monsters and 3 Kotaker link monsters on the field, like Allied Kotaker, which, you know, the new Omnigate that matches in this set. Like you get one card equals 28 link rating, which is just a think about that for a second. Your one normal summon, your one link rating turns into 28 on the field. So yeah, this is the type of deck that will make Joshua Schmidt like wake up at night in a cold sweat. Like this is, to him, this is like everything that's wrong with Cyber's decks, which, you know, I can't really disagree with, because, you know, the combo again takes, if you go uninterrupted, it takes, no joke, 37 minutes to complete. And yeah, it has like extenders. It's like the only thing about Adagnister is that it dies to Droll, so it's like that's one thing. Whereas, like, you know, the other Cyber decks don't get hurt by Droll as much, or like barely at all if you're Malice. But yeah, the Adagnister, it sets up. I mean, it sets up like one of the most disgusting boards in the game, and it has the longest turns, and it's Cybers, and it abuses everything Cybers has to offer. Like, it Link Decoder, Slash Mage, it abuses all the Firewall, all the Firewall link monsters, all the Kotaker link monsters, and like all the generic good Cyber support. Like it obviously it runs the Mathmech engine as well, because Circular is also a broken card, so it runs. It's just an amalgamation of everything unholy with the Cybers archetype. And I actually kind of like it more than Mathmech, even though like Mathmech arguably is like less vulnerable to certain hand traps, like on Droll, for example. But Adagnister has the way higher ceiling, and like it's also like your opponent is less likely to know how to deal with Adagnister, and like it's harder to stop, especially when they don't know what to hand trap and what to hit and so on. So yeah, I also have this deck built, so if you want to see how toxic this deck is, you know, let me know, and I'll try to get some gameplay of Adagnister deck. But yeah, and then next we have Gem Knights, and Brilliant Fusion went back to 3, which is actually kind of insane. Brilliant Fusion is low-key one of the most cracked cards in the game, and then the actual Gem Knights are actually, I actually think the Gem Knights are the best archetype from this new pack. Obviously you could argue that the best card from this new pack is the backup Adagnister, because it's used in the best deck, which is Malice. But like as a deck as a whole, I think Gem Knights are the best deck from this pack out of like every other new archetype introduced, or quote unquote new cards introduced. And yeah, it's the best way to play Gem Knight is a blind second deck. So like therefore, like there's comparisons with like Tenpai as well. There are inevitable comparisons with Tenpai on which one is the better blind second strategy. It's one of these two. Like there's actually an argument that Gem Knight is actually better than Tenpai, which like there's an argument to where I think Tenpai is like probably like a mid tier 2ish deck, and like you could argue Gem Knight being higher than Tenpai. I will say is that the one thing about Gem Knight is that there's only one real way to build it going second, which is a board breaker build, which is why I'm not as much of a believer as I could be, because I'm just not as much of a believer in board breakers over hand traps. Because if you like look at some of the top decks, especially like Malice, you really want to hand trap them before they get to their combo. Like you would prefer that as opposed to them doing their full combo and then having to break their board, because number one, Malice draws 3 to 4 cards, and Malice draws annoying non-engines such as Ash Blossom, and especially Dominus Impulse that they play. So like when you're playing board breakers, you're basically conceding the fact that your Malice opponent is most likely going to draw a Dominus Impulse, or Dominus Impulse plus Ash, which would be disastrous. Those are really annoying to play through as like going second board breaker decks. And also like the Malice inboard is somewhat resilient to board breakers. Like if your Malice opponent knows what they're doing, which I guess is a hard ask sometimes on Master Duel, but like I'm assuming in Duelist Cup, especially Stage 2, your Malice opponents will know what they're doing, in which case they can play around board breakers a lot better because their monsters are like in the graveyard and they have March Hares in hand to like stagger the timing of when they summon their monsters. So like they can play around dropleting the entire field, for example, and like it's just in general it's hard. It's like a much harder thing to like play into Malice boards with board breakers as opposed to just trying to hand trap them when like the Gemini deck plays too much engine in order to it plays too much engine in order to run as much hand traps as you want to. The Tenpai deck has room for tons of non-engine, has room for like high 20s, like 30 non-engine. So like if you don't want to play Striker Tenpai, if you don't want to play the board breaker build, you can play a hand trap build and actually run a lot of hand traps, the most hand traps in the entire game. And like if any deck is going to stop Malice with hand traps, it's going to be Tenpai. Gemini, I don't think you can run enough hand traps. I do like some of the text that people are playing, like Shadal Fusion is like really nice for breaking boards. And like it's just more Ash bait. Like one Ash Blossom generally is not going to stop you because between like Brilliant Fusion, Scatter Fusion, and Shadow Fusion, like what are you going to Ash Blossom, right? It's generally Ash Blossom plus like something like a Dauntless Impulse that you might struggle with. And other decks, there's another deck we're gonna get to that also you don't want to blind second board breaker against, which like is, we'll be discussing shortly. So I guess yeah, for now, because Tenpai can have the option to run either board breakers or hand traps, even though I think the Tenpai engine is a lot weaker playing into boards compared to the Gemini engine. I actually think the Gemini engine is really strong to play into boards. It's just that the boards are still strong enough to where you can't break them with just engine. And because Tenpai can have the option to run hand traps, whereas Gemini cannot run a hand trap build as effectively. This is why I'm still putting it here. I still think Tenpai is probably the best line second deck, but Gemini is good. Like generally, I think Gemini is a good deck. And if any time the format changes to a point where we're not gonna have like as many FTKs in the format, and like if Malice dies down a bit, then I could see Gemini actually being a really good deck and even better than Tenpai in some formats. Just probably not this format, in my opinion. And like, yeah. So next new cards to discuss. So one is the Heraldic decks, and this is like another reason why I'm not a fan of playing board breakers as much as hand traps, because if you go second and you play board breakers into a Heraldic Riseio deck, because like this is the only thing Heraldic Beasts are used for. I don't think anybody in their right mind, I'm not sure there's a single person that has played pure Heraldic Beasts in like TCG or OCG when the cards came out. So, and like that probably extends to Master Duel too. But the Heraldic cards are used in a conjunction with Riseio cards in order to hand loop your opponent. So like, if you blind second versus the Riseio deck and you don't have hand traps, and then they just go, they do their Heraldic stuff, then you're going to get hand loop for 2 cards, and then you're also going to get Protos after they know what you're playing because they hand looped you. So like, that's like an auto loss if you don't open a hand trap, which is kind of it's kind of toxic, really. That's like one of the main reasons. Yeah. So like you blind second and your opponent goes summon like Heraldic Beast Griffin, and then they like do their shit, and then they Protoss lock you. Like, yeah, that's not good. Now here's the thing. I'm not sure that like the Heraldic Beast build of Riseio is even the best build of Riseio, because even though it has a high ceiling going first, and it absolutely like destroys like Striker Tenpai and like blind second Gemnites and like other decks that run low amounts of hand traps, the Heraldic cards themselves are not really great draws. In fact, they're kind of just bricks, and this is a deck that has low-key Heraldic Beast Riseio runs like the most bricks in the entire game out of like any deck, because like the Heraldic cards are kind of bricks by themselves. Then you have like the Riseio bricks, which is like Node Riseio and Star Riseio and like plugin if you decide to run it. And then you have then if you run Protos, then you have the Protos bricks, which is the Nemesis flag, and then the Arch Nemesis Protos itself. And then it's like you have like the double, like almost a quarter of your deck is like bricks or soft bricks. It's like you're gonna open a lot of weird like bad hands, which like I guess it's not the worst because you do play 7th Tachyon, which I guess puts bricks back in your deck. So like you have to put back a card in your deck anyway. You might as well put back a brick. But it also cuts in room for non-engine, whereas like that's another advantage of the Riseio deck, which Riseio plays a lot of non-engine. But when you introduce a secondary engine like the Heraldic Beasts, it takes up slots that you could use for hand traps, and it makes the deck worse going second, but it makes it better going first. So like I'm not sure whether to which one is exactly better. For now, I think the Riseio deck, the pure Riseio deck, is still more consistent, better than the will perform better against most matchups compared to the Heraldic Riseio deck, because the Heraldic Riseio deck is good at beating decks that play board breakers. Stuff like Book of Eclipse, or like Striker Tenpai or Blind Second decks, and like stuff like that. But against most decks, you don't need to hand loop your opponent for 2 cards and Protos lock them to win the game. You have Riseio. If you generally just do your normal combo, like, you have a good chance of winning against most other decks, as long as they're not playing heavy board breakers, which most decks are not playing heavy board breakers. So by like that logic, against most decks, just normal Riseio playing less bricks and playing more non-engine would suffice enough already to where you don't need to dilute your deck with all of the heraldic cards. But it's still a debate whether which one is better than the next. And also, like, there's a debate whether Riseio is closer to all the other decks in tier 2 or it's closer to Malice. It's hard for me to say. I don't think Riseio, like putting Riseio in the same tier as Malice, is necessarily correct, because I think Malice is unanimously better than Riseio. I think almost everyone will agree with that, but I also think most people will agree that Riseio is probably the second best deck, and it's better than all the other decks in tier 2. So there's a debate whether we should put Malice, or we should put Riseio in the same tier as Malice, or Riseio in the same tier as everyone else, whether it's closer to Malice or it's close to the other tier 2 decks. But yeah, for now, we'll put it here, and like, it is going to be, Riseio is going to be the second best deck on this tier list in one way, shape, or form. And yeah, for other cards in the new pack, so like, we have Nekroz cards, and like, here's the thing about Nekroz. I looked up how people were playing Nekroz cards in the OCG, because these cards aren't out in the TCG yet, and the only way that people were playing Nekroz is as an engine in Riseio. I have not seen anyone play pure Nekroz, whatever that means. Like, what in the OCG where the cards have been out, and I haven't seen all the new deck lists I've seen, like, people playing Nekroz on, like, playing with the Nekroz cards on Master Duel. They've only been in Riseio lists. So like, pretty much Nekroz right now, all I see the Nekroz cards are as a rank 4 engine for Riseio. Because those cards here, or the 2 main Nekroz cards are the one you see here, which is Amelia and Advance. Basically, Advance, when it's normal summons, special summons Amelia from deck, and they're both level 4s. So you can see where the synergy with Riseio is, and then Amelia can like add a Nekroz ritual or a Nekroz ritual spell to hand, which is like not the most important part of the reason why you would run with Riseio, but you could potentially like use the Nekroz card, these 2 Nekroz cards in particular, as a rank 4 engine for Riseio, to access dual drive, and then have an additional ritual, Nekroz ritual on top of your end board, which is like cool. I guess I don't think it's really in like the top 3 ways to play Riseio. I'm gonna be honest here. Like, it seems like there's better rank 4 engines available than playing Nekroz, where the only upside of playing Nekroz as a rank 4 engine in Riseio compared to the other rank 4 engines is that you can run a ritual, which the ritual itself is not like, it's kind of a brick in a Riseio strategy, because you're probably not playing a heavy ritual deck with a lot of ritual spells and a lot of ritual monsters. So like, just drawing a straight ritual monster doesn't really help you much. It's more of a brick, and like, yeah, I mean, when the other rank 4 engines you're competing with is like Heraldic, which literally is like an FTK going first, double hand loop plus access to Prolos. I don't know what the advantage of playing the Nekroz cards as a rank 4 engine is. And also, like, it's debatable whether Nekroz Riseio is even the best ritual Nekroz variant, because there are people who played Riseio Voiceless Voice too, because being a ritual deck, it doesn't conflict with the rank 4 extra deck lock that Riseio does, because you're ritual summoning. But it's probably more synergistic than Voiceless Voice, I'm gonna be honest. So maybe it is. Maybe Nekroz Riseio is the best ritual Riseio variant, for however that matters. I don't really think it's like, again, it's a Riseio deck, so how bad can a Riseio deck be? At the same time, I don't know what is the reason to play Nekroz Riseio over literally any other Riseio variant besides you like the Nekroz cards. Which at this point you're not even playing the Nekroz cards like they're Nekroz cards. You're just playing them as Riseio. So I don't know. I'll just put this here because like it's like realistically it's Riseio Nekroz may be better than a lot of decks I put in tier 3, but like there's not a reason to play Nekroz Riseio over other Riseio variants. So like that's why I'm like putting this here. I'll split the difference and like put it in Rogue, I guess. High Rogue potentially. Here we have Spenta, another card that's not in TCG yet, I don't think. That's right, her name is Spenta, not Spoon, to all you TCG players. And she came along with a wave of Magistic support, which is basically like the Nekroz cards, where I haven't seen a single person from like the OCG data I've been looking at actually use Magistic as its own deck. Like this is, as far as I'm concerned, Magistic cannot really function as its own deck, even more so than Nekroz, to be honest, because there's just not very many main deck cards. This Spenta basically just adds any Magistic cards, but like what the Magistic cards, what they do by themselves, all they do is like end on like a Zorora equipped it with like a few Magistic monsters to floodgate out your opponent, but it's like you can't really build an entire deck around that one interaction. I feel like it's not really cutting it, but it does have synergy with a bunch of spellcaster archetypes. So like obviously, like if we were to rank Magistic as its own deck, like it would be like way down here because it's as an own deck. It's just not its own deck. Like you can't really build a deck that's pure Magistic. Like that doesn't work. But like Magistic is an engine that's used in a bunch of spellcaster decks. So therefore we can go over some of the spellcaster decks next. But like, it's probably the decks that it helps are probably at rogue level right now because I mean the most known deck that uses the Magistic cards in Spenta is Dracoslayer, which obviously is not anywhere near being released in Master Duel yet. So like without it's the best deck to pair with. Like it's not really going to be represented much in the meta, at least in the higher tiers. And like one of the archetypes you can combine it with, like you can combine it with like I've seen people combine Spenta and like the Magistic cards with Witchcrafter, which Witchcrafter again is not really a high tier strategy if I'm being polite here, but also another one is Alistair, normal summon Alistair. It got its alt art, it's cool alt arts, but I really don't see the like. I'm gonna be honest, like there's like a couple new cards with Alistair. There's like a new fusion that helps break boards, but this deck is so mid. Like this is Alistair. Gone are the days where Alistair is like one of the best 3 normal summons you can normal summon. Okay, like straight up. I don't know if you're normal summoning Alistair, linking it off into Artemis, and then doing like invoked plays and trying to summon the Mechaba. I don't really know where you're trying to get at. Like I'm gonna be honest. Yeah, I just like it's 2025. We gotta move on. Okay. And the fact that it only got like 1 new fusion from what I'm looking at, from what I see from the new packs, and like there's not really much data on people having success with even the new invoked stuff. I don't really have much faith in fucking normal summon Alistair, unfortunately. A deck that I do have much more faith in to splash with the Magistic cards it's actually Centurion. So believe it or not, like this is the deck that's like pretty much. I mean, obviously it doesn't exist. TCG players don't know about this because like Spenta doesn't exist in the TCG, but Centurion Magistic is actually maybe even the best way to play Centurion, at least in this format. Because the problem with Centurion is, number one, it doesn't have very many starters / extenders. It has like, if you squint, it has like 13, and that's including Bonfire, and like, so you're very prone to just like dying to 1 Interruption and losing to 1 Hand Trap, not to mention like it being awful going second. And also another issue with Centurion is that the deck really relies a lot on Bestials. Like you want to be playing Bestials with Centurion because the Bestials levels line up perfectly with your Centurion monsters being like level 6 or level 8. They can summon on your opponent's turn to trigger stand up and synchro on your opponent's turn. Like your main monster are light and dark. Like you want to play the Bestials usually with Centurion. The problem is Bestials in this format are kind of like they're kind of mid, and that's like being that's like being nice. Like they're honestly they're actually quite below average in terms of hand traps. Like they're quite bad. Most decks that don't benefit off Bystials would not run Bystials as actual hand traps. They're running it because it's engine. Like they're extenders like in Malice, and like they're extenders in Centurion. But like other decks aren't gonna just play a random Bystial like a random Magnemite and use it as a hand trap and call it a day because it's Magnemite and Druid's. Even Druid's Worm is like not really that great as a hand trap. Like you could argue that yeah, Druid's Worm can out Riseio Detonator, but I mean, it's not going to out Riseio Detonator if they search cross along the way, which they always do because their Bystials are not stopping the Riseio cards in the first place from searching cross. So like, yeah, basically because the deck depends on Bystials a lot for its power, and the fact that Bystials are kind of bad, it means that Centurion is kind of bad. With the Magician's cards, you can rely on like a sub engine that's not the Bystials, a sub engine that's not just like terrible in the meta, and like the Magician's engine like adds a lot to the Centurion. Adds some consistency. It adds extenders. It adds like more starters so that you're not like just bricking a lot, which like tends to happen with Centurion. And yeah, your boards actually get stronger because you can add the Zoroa Synchro on top of your end board. So you can imagine you can have like a Lazar alongside a Zoroa that's getting your opponent out of both Links and Xyz, which is like very good this format. If you have a Zoroa equipped with an Xyz and a Link, it means that you're basically you're floodgating Malice and you're floodgating Riseio, which are like by far the two most popular decks. So like that, there's actually something there. And like, yeah, I don't think this is gonna see much representation in like a Duelist Cup format because it's still like, I mean, Centurion is not really that popular for deck right now, and like so like people aren't gonna be really excited to be playing like a new Centurion variant with Magicians, especially when most people I think don't even know about it. But it's something to look for like in the future, especially in formats after the top decks get hit a little bit and there's people more willing to explore and play the Centurion Magicians build. That's actually something to look into. But like obviously the Centurion, if you're playing straight up Bestial Centurion, then I can't really see it being much higher than Rogue, if at all. So yeah, then next, for even more new cards from the new pack, we have the Regenesis cards, which are in a very unfortunate state in Master Duel because the very obvious pairing with the Regenesis cards is obviously the Kashtira monsters, specifically Kashtira Unicorn, because it has 2500 attack, and like Regenesis monsters depend on you having 2500 or monsters 2500 attack and defense or defense. But in the state of Kashtira monsters in Master Duel is completely abysmal. Like whenever the minimal success that this deck had in the TCG is because TCG has 3 copies of Pressured Planet Ravesoft, 3 copies of Kashtira Unicorn, and 3 copies of Fenrir, which searches Unicorn. Okay, that's like 9 copies of ways to access Kashtira Unicorn. In Master Duel, we have 1 Ravesoft, 2 Unicorn, and 1 Fenrir. So we have literally less than half the available copies of good Kashtira monsters to pair with the Regenesis cards as TGG has. So like that's already like a hit the consistency somewhat. And then there's also the fact that the Regenesis monsters, they kind of don't do enough. Like this is a deck that's meant to be a grind deck. It doesn't have a very oppressive end board or anything. It's like low ceiling. It has a good grind game because all your monsters, you get to add all your monsters back to your hand like every turn. So like over a game that lasts multiple turns, that would be good. The problem is we're in playing modern Yu-Gi-Oh in Malice Riseio format where the average duel does not last multiple turns. It would be lucky, like we're lucky if it lasts just turns plural at all. And like the amount of disruption this deck puts up is not really that much. Like the monsters, they like tribute themselves, they tribute other monsters to have interruptions. You have like a 1 negate, you have like a bounce, you have like a spell trap banish, you have like a Book of Moon. So like you can have like 3 or 4 interruptions if you get access to everything, which is not guaranteed. But yeah, if you live until the next turn, it's great because then all the monsters that you tributed for their effects, you get them back. But like what's more often going to happen is like you're probably just going to die. Like I don't know, this like plays like a bunch of monsters that are also like they're 2-card combos just to summon themselves because they're level 7 or higher monsters. Like normally, like they're not 1-card combos. Like you need other monsters to work with them. It's like there's like some consistency issues. You're doing 2-card combos to end on a very mid board when other 2-card combos in this game are basically pseudo FTKs. So it's like you feel like you're playing like a somewhat like outdated deck unless like you're pairing it with Floodgates, which I don't even know. Floodgates, like we can have the discussion with Floodgates right now. Floodgates are kind of not very great in Master Duel right now either. Like this is the thing because the Floodgates that are good against Malice are number one bad against Riseio. Number two, Floodgates in general are just bad against Riseio, the spell and trap kind, because Riseios don't really care about too many Floodgates, and like if it does, you can X Riseio, send Aggregator, negate a Floodgate. It's like okay, cool, nice Floodgate. Also, like I mean, you can't really run macro or you can't depend on macro or defisher because the best deck in the game is Malice, and if you're just playing multiple copies of macro and defisher, you're essentially running a Floodgate that doesn't do much. But then if you want to run targeted Floodgates against Malice, like Imperial Iron Wall or Soul Drain, then like you're gonna get eaten up by like every other deck because there's a reason that Soul Drain and Imperial Iron Wall were not popular Floodgates before Malice. That's because they generally sucked against most decks. So like if you're playing specific Malice and anti-Malice Floodgates, then you're generally just playing Floodgates that are bad against everything else, especially Riseio. So like even depending on Floodgates, it's like kind of that's the reason why Kashira, which I'm bringing up next, which is like Kashira, like kind of links to the Regenesis cards. I'm not sure if you should run. You should probably run the limited amount of Kashira cards you can run with Regenesis. I don't think if you're playing just straight up Kashira, I'm not sure if it's even worth running the Regenesis cards with Kashira. But like, something Kashira is like a Floodgate deck. By now, it has its main mod deck monsters are so limited. Like there's so few copies of Unicorn and Fender, and like you will rarely ever get to a Rise Chart because one hand trap can just stop you from getting to a Rise Chart. So oftentimes your strategy with Kashira is just summon a big monster and then set a bunch of Floodgates. A lot of times you're literally doing Kashira Ogre control plus set like 4 or 5, and like as we mentioned with the Floodgate discussion, a lot of Floodgates are way worse this format. So like if you're playing the deck that depends on Floodgates, I think it's like a hard proposition. That's also why like all of these other stun variants, like Exodia for example, which I don't even include here, but like Exodia is like also nerfed because you don't know what Floodgates you want to run. Plus Exodia is bad into Riseio, and like in general, stun decks are also just bad into Riseio in general. Like going second into a detonator, like good luck. It's not playing a back row deck. Going second into a detonator is not a good proposition for you. And also like sure, we can discuss the other quote unquote stun decks right now. So like Runic is probably the worst. Any Runic variant is probably going to be the worst deck in this tier list. Sorry Josh, but like I mean, what are you gonna like fucking Runic tip? You're gonna Runic freezing curses your opponent, banish 3 cards, banish a Dormouse, get them a free Dormouse. Like is that really what you want to do? Like just banish a mouse, then you get your opponent's free advantage. Like that sounds gross. I don't like, even if you're playing a Floodgate deck, I would avoid playing with the Runic cards. Like it's just not. Also like fucking Malice non-targeting banishes cards. So like your fountain is liable to just get like banished anyways, and then you can't even get it back. Like just don't worry about the Runic fountain. And there's like one type of Floodgate that actually works. It's probably the monster Floodgates. It's like Fossil Dyna and like barrier statues, because those at least stop your opponent from special summoning monsters. Like it can at least stop an X from sending Aggregator to negate your field because it stops the X from summoning. So like it probably does more than like the trap Floodgates, which in general are just extremely hit or miss, and also like oftentimes are going to be more miss than hit. But it's still problematic because Fossil Dyna is very small, and the fortunate thing, or like I guess the fortunate thing, depending on how you look at it, is that the main decks like Malice and Riseio, their monsters are bigger than Fossil Dyna, and their monsters are bigger than the barrier statues. So you can't just draw like one floodgate monster like and feel good. You have to like literally draw a floodgate monster and then like a fucking solemn with along with it, or like a I don't know if you're down bad enough to run Mirror Force, but like you need protection along with the floodgate monster in order to deal with it. I think stun in general, like we've seen a decrease in stun like in this format, even though like usually when we're in like a very like a tier 0.5 or like very concentrated metas where like there's specifically 1 or 2 top decks that are way above everything else, you generally tend to see a lot more stun because it's in theory it's easier to tailor your deck towards the specific deck you're trying to hate it against. But there's just not a lot of effective stun tools that you can be used that are good against both Malice and Riseio, which is why like even now in this kind of format, stun is nowhere near as high as we've seen it in other formats. Like we've seen stun be like the 3rd or 4th most played deck in in previous Master Duel formats. That is not anywhere near the case right now. So yeah, okay, stun discussion out of the way. What else? Oh yeah, Tearlaments. Okay, Tearlaments. So Tearlaments, people are hyped about Tearlaments mainly because of Gem Knight Fusion, because Gem Knight Fusion can Gem Knight Fusion, Jesus. No, that is a completely different card. Sorry, I meant Brilliant Fusion. Brilliant Fusion for Amethyst can dump a tier name. So resolving Brilliant Fusion essentially just gets you the Kit Colors without a normal summon, since you send a tier name and then you fusion summon Amethyst, and then the tier name triggers, and because the Amethyst itself is an aqua, that's just a tier, that's just Kit Colors right there. No special no normal summon required. It's like a pseudo instant fusion, which is a banned card. It just takes up one of your fusion names, so it's not as good. But like, yeah, it's cool. It's a nice play. The thing is that I feel like that doesn't really address the issues with tier, because I mean tier is their tier has like a lot of weaknesses. One of the weaknesses of tier is not its ability to get the Kit Colors. Okay, like the entire deck is built around getting Kit Colors in the first place. Like getting to Kit Colors is not the hard part. Like it's like everything else that's the hard part. It's the fact that Tearlaments, tends to not have as much space for non-engines. So it's that's a problem for going second. It's bad at playing into both the Riseio and Malice boards, because Malice can just banish all your stuff, and that's really hard to play through banishes with tier. Riseio either ends on Baguska, which is that's not good for you, or it's a deck that plays Heraldics and then can Protos you, which is also not good, and you don't run enough hand traps to really effectively, like, consistently even be able to have a chance to stop either of them when going second. Also, like, the decks, Kit Colors is still a hard once per turn, so like getting your Kit Colors in perm, it's still like a big hindrance. Even if you have, no matter how much access you have to Kit Colors, like you can only use the Kit Colors effect once. So like, I guess you can go Fiendsmith afterwards to like mitigate like the effect of an in perm, but like it's still like a decent choke point. But like, the thing I really don't like about the Brilliant Fusion, besides the fact that it's adding more bricks to your deck, which, tier is a deck that also plays quite a bit of bricks, and like the Brilliant Fusion itself is like you're actually cards that are bad mills as well. Makes the deck play into Maxi more, which is also why like the Fiendsmith was kind of weird. Like I know the Fiendsmith engine is probably worth it, but like tiers, one of the biggest perks of playing tier was that was resistant to Maxi and Fool Loss. Like you didn't care if you get hit by one of those, because you could just make Kit Colors and pass and like have and be good. But if you're playing cards like Brilliant Fusion, or like cards like more cards that depend on you special summoning, like the Gem Knight cards like Nepirim and stuff like that, then you're playing more into Maxi and the Charmies as well, which is used to be one of the strengths of this. Like in general, I just don't feel like it's a good format for tier. To be honest, it's a good meta because it has a bad matchup against the top 2 decks. So like even though the Brilliant Fusion side, like the Brilliant Fusion tech is cool, I don't even think it's like necessarily the best way to play tier, because again, you're just taking out even what limited non-engine space you have in tier. You're taking out even more to put in more Kit Colors enablers, which that was not what I really thought was the problem with the deck in the first place. But yeah, it's kind of rough for tier. I actually don't like tier in this format, and also, funnily enough, tier at Worlds also did not perform well. Although that's like completely different. That's a different topic. And yeah, also something else that came with the new pack. Okay, we had a balance. Block Dragon came to 3. I don't think this is gonna matter at all, unfortunately, because like the Block Dragon decks. Number one, okay, number one, Lancia is being played, and like this is out of all the decks we've discussed so far, this may be the deck that gets hurt the most by Lancia outside of Malice, because if you get Lancia, you can't summon Block Dragon. So like literally, like that's your Block Dragon deck, your Adamantipator deck, your Block Dragon Turbo deck cannot use summon its boss monster. That's so bad. And even if whether it's at 1 or 3 copies, that won't matter. Like you do, like if you go first and your opponent doesn't have like a floodgate hand trap, like they don't have Max Siege, Roll, or Lancia, which is kind of a hard ask, not gonna lie. But if they don't have any of those, then you're likely favored to win because you have infinite access to Block Dragon on top of hard drawing it now. And like as long as you get to play the game with Block Dragon, like yeah, you should win. But like the Block Dragon decks, they're not good playing into end boards like Malice, like because Malice would just, the fact that White Binder can just banish all your shit, and like it banishes all your stuff, so like you don't even get fodder like Earth monsters to summon your Block Dragon in the first place. It's really rough. And yeah, I do like the triple the triple Block Dragon is very funny, but I don't think it's it's enough. Like obviously like it's not enough. That's why they brought it back to 3, because they figured it wouldn't like make Block Dragon oppressive. It'll be annoying to play against if you go second against it, but like most of the time, if you're playing like one of these top decks, you should probably not really have a problem with Block Dragon or Adamantipator decks in general. Also, like people might be asking if they haven't seen the Gem Knight cards, would you play Block Dragon and Gem Knights? No. The best Gem Knights are not rocks. Okay, like they're not rocks, they're not even Earth monsters for that matter. All Block Dragon would do is add the garnets. But like it would literally add garnet. That's like what it adds. Like you don't, it's the bricky Gem Knights that you don't really want in your hand, or just use them as fusion material, or like fuse from deck like Brilliant Fusion. So yeah. So next is Despia or Branded, which it kind of has like I'm putting it has like the same logic with Tier, whereas this is like a very rough format for Branded as well. For like all the problems, like all the reasons why I think Tier struggles in this format, Branded is the same way. It's a deck that runs even less hand traps, even less room for like non-engine than Tier, because oftentimes it goes above 40 cards. So like it's a pure board breaker deck, and board breakers, again, the issue with board breakers is that they're not good. They're not the ideal strategy into Malice, and they can be very catastrophic versus Riseio because of the heraldic cards now that you can just get FTK'd or Protos Log, which is basically an FTK if you don't open a hand trap, which you're probably not going to, because again, you don't run many hand traps in Branded. Also, unlike Tier, Branded gets hit by Lancia a lot harder because this deck also plays Gold Sark. It also one of the key plays when you Branded Fusion is obviously making Albion, and Albion obviously does not work if you get Lancia. Also, when you're going second, Lancia is actually really annoying, because getting Lancia in Branded means that you can't Mirror Jade, which when you're going first, that doesn't really matter that you can't use Mirror Jade. But when you're going second and you can't use Mirror Jade to help break boards, that is a massive issue, because Mirror Jade is one of the best options you have, like one of the best tools you have to actually break boards, and it also like dumps an Alvast Fallen Velvast fusion to get you access to additional follow up. That's how you set up your patented main phase 3. But when you're under Lancia, you can't even use Mirror Jade at all. So like it's just actually quite rough, to be honest. Like I don't know if it's better than, it's probably still performs better than Tier, just because it's traditionally performed better than Tier, for months now. But like it's definitely rough. Malice and Riseio are not ideal matchups for Branded. Like also like Baguska, if Riseio isn't playing Herald, they're still gonna make Baguska, so that still demands you have some kind of out to the Baguska as well. So it's like draw lit or bust, because like the Baguska is also very hard to super poly. Like what are you gonna do? Normal summon Maxi to super poly with the Baguska? Like, come on now. Yeah, and then so onto like some decks that I think are these are the decks that I think are maybe some of the aside from Malice and Riseio. If you're not playing Malice and Riseio, I think these are some of like the next best decks So like Blue Eyes, like amazingly, Blue Eyes. Ever since the Primite cards came into the Master Duel, Blue Eyes has had the highest win rate in Master Duel out of any deck this entire time. That still includes now, even into Malice and Riseio format, the deck with the highest win rate is still Blue Eyes. And like it's not like this is some like niche deck thing. It's not like this is some like Ritual Beast thing where it's like only a certain amount of players are playing this deck and like no bad players are like playing this for Blue Eyes or anything. No, Blue Eyes is a very popular deck. It's like it's consistently. I think Blue Eyes has still consistently always been in like the top 3 or at least top 4 in terms of usage for a deck. So like yeah, probably like besides Malice and Riseio, Blue Eyes is like low key maybe like still the 3rd most played deck. And it's the fact that it still has the highest win rate is like kind of crazy, even with the semi-limited cards. Which, by the way, like I'm sorry, like yeah, I think Maiden and what's it called? Maiden and Sage deserve to be semi-limited as of this point. No, not really. Do I think it makes that much of a difference? Also, no, not really. Like I've played a lot of Blue Eyes since Sage and Maiden got semi-limited, and like it's been fine. Like I haven't really felt like it's like consistency has been that much worse because you can just replace it with other cards. Like I guess it makes you craft an UR in Bingo Machine Go, but like the deck is still has all the strengths it had before. It still is very strong into hand traps. It's like going first. This is still one of the best decks in the game at going first, just because it's you can't really hand trap Blue Eyes. Like there's no, even like compared to Malice, there's no silver bullet you can use against Blue Eyes. Like Malice can get Lancia, it can't get Max Seed. Okay, if you Lancia at Blue Eyes, like that's literally it does basically nothing, especially when they're going first, because like all it does is stop you from making Tyrant Dragon and equipping and like banishing wishes to get the Neo Blue Eyes ultimate out of their extra deck, which like that doesn't really matter at all. Like I would give up having targeting protection every day of the week to just hand leave you one card from your hand, which is your Lancia. And also like Maxi, this is one of the best decks into Maxi. Oftentimes you can just end on like end on like Valor plus Majesty plus like 2 to 3 plus interruptions for like 1 or 0 Maxi, sometimes even 0 Maxi draws depending on where they Maxi. And the Mulch armies, let's forget about it. Okay, the Mulch armies are not doing jack shit. Like for Perulia, sometimes can draw 2 cards. Most of the time you can stop and like just not give them the extra draws. Fualos is literally an upstart goblin. Fualos draws an average of like 0.5 cards versus Blue Eyes. It's like really bad, especially if they draw the Primite cards. And like honestly, like the best Mulch army against Blue Eyes is like Meows, because Meows you can potentially draw 2 if you summon Maiden plus Blue Eyes from grave, which like you could also just not summon the Maiden from grave and like just not give them that extra draw 2. Like you're probably fine with that. Like this, the Blue Eyes is still extremely solid, and it has good non-engine. It's the deck that besides Tenpai has probably the most amount of non-engine. You can run the most amount of hand traps, and it can run good hand traps like Purge, which is like Purge is one of the few hand traps that are good against both Malice and Riseio to an extent. And like you can run like 18, you have room for like 18 plus hand traps, so you can often draw 2 hand traps and like try to pair your hand traps together, which like a lot of other decks just can't do this format. And yeah, and like unlike Tenpai, you don't have to go second every game with Blue Eyes like you do with Tenpai. Like you don't have to work that hard. Like you can have the advantage of being a good deck going first. So yeah, I really like. I'm one of like the last true believers of Blue Eyes. I think there's an argument that Blue Eyes could be like either like the 3rd to 5th best deck, like a solid tier 2 deck. You could argue that Blue Eyes maybe could be the 3rd best deck after Malice and Riseio. Like I guess not a lot of people would agree with that, but there's an argument that you can be made, which is not something that can be said for a lot of decks. And yeah, it's look, man. All I'm saying is I met like Maiden and Sage being semi-limited. The deck is still perfectly playable without it. I don't think if they came back, it would really change the viability of Blue Eyes. Anyways, I think it would literally be in the exact same spot no matter what numbers like the Sage and Maiden are at. But I mean, yeah, like this deck is still like statistically, it's like still the best deck. So like they're not going to unhit a deck that they hit like a couple months ago, quote unquote hit. The hits are not huge, okay? Like the semi limits is not a big deal, and the deck is still performing despite that. So like there's probably no real reason to actually bring those cards back. Like this deck is still fine, and like if they do major hits to Malice and Riseio in the future, then Blue Eyes is still going to be a playable deck. Like this deck is a good investment too. So yeah. Next we have Momento. So Momento, it's a bit weird because Momento, I feel like Momento is really bad in the Malice because, again, Momento is a deck that, unlike Blue Eyes, it does not run a lot of hand traps at all, and it prefers board breakers, which is not the best ideal strategy versus Malice. And normally that would make up for it by having a good matchup versus Riseio, because like we saw at Worlds, a lot of people actually counterpicked Riseio. Their Riseio counter deck was basically like a variant of Momento that just played board breakers like Book of Eclipse and like stuff like that, or like Thrust and Tactics and all that stuff. That's there's a the heraldic cards coming out kind of throws a wrench in that strategy again, because if you're playing board breakers, I feel like I'm a broken record here, but playing board breakers when your opponent goes hand loop you for 2 and then Protos locks you does not feel good. So like yeah, it's a bit rougher going second. That being said, like this deck is still really strong going first. Like you should win most games as long as you don't get max seed. Like you should be fine versus Malice and Riseio. You're not really that bothered by Lancia. Like it stops you from banishing Fusion from Grave, but like that's the only thing it stops. Like if you're a good Memento player, you should be able to play through that. And yeah, it's just I kind of don't trust like the type of deck that Memento is right now. Just like a board breaker, high engine board breaker type of deck because of this nature of like the top decks, but it's still at least tier 2. Like I know like most people would think would think Memento is better than Blue Eyes, but like I don't share the same view. But like yeah. Next is like Mermail. I actually like I low-key think Mermail is like maybe better than Memento, although it's like the same type of deck. It's like it's a deck that has very little room for non-engine, and it's very strong going first. Does generally not care about Lancia. There's like one thing Lancia hits, which is like the Minstrel, which I think if you're a good Mermail player, you can easily play around Lancia stopping your Minstrel. Like I think that like the winning Worlds teams, their Mermail deck was literally designed to still barrier statue lock you through a Lancia. So like that just shows how much that mattered. But yeah, decks like Lancia and like decks like Memento, these are also decks that also make playing board breakers feel a bit worse, because these are also decks that like if you're just playing board breakers and you're playing against Mermail, you're just gonna get your entire hand ripped, and like you're not never gonna get a chance to play. Like it's just like Heraldic Riseio, except you get even more cards ripped out of your hand. Like it feels kind of hopeless if you're like I would be tilted if I had like Droplet Tactics like Thrust in hand and my opponent normal summon Neptibus, and I would be like, Well, also there's something that I didn't mention about Memento is that Memento also has like a floodgate option available, which I don't think most people are going to be playing. So like it's the Mjolnir lock. I made a video on it and stuff like that. Like you can artifact Mjolnir lock your opponent and prevent your floodgate opponent out of the game too. So like the 1 in like 10 Memento players that's on that toxic strategy also, like it's gonna make you regret your choice playing board breakers. It's like this format's like going second this run is like a mess, but. Yeah, we'll put Mermail there. And next is so Primite Fiendsmith. This is the only like quote unquote pure Fiendsmith decks I'm counting. Like there is other Fiendsmith variants, but like I think the most popular other Fiendsmith variant is just Riseio Fiendsmith. So like we'll just group that in with like the other Riseio decks. But yeah, Primite Fiendsmith. It's like I'm gonna be honest, Primite Fiendsmith is like Blue Eyes, but worse in most ways, mainly because like the main difference is that like it's very similar. Primite Fiendsmith is very similar to Primite Blue Eyes. It depends heavily on the Primite engine, 1-card combos, ends on like a modest amount of interruptions, but has lots of room for non-engine. The thing is that Blue Eyes can shrug off Maxi, and it really doesn't care about mulch armies that much, especially like Fool Loss, for example. Whereas Primite cares quite a bit more about Maxi and Fool Loss. That's like the main difference. So in general, that means it's probably worse against most decks because, I mean, if you have the option to pick a deck that gets hurt by Maxi and a deck that doesn't, like, you would obviously pick the one that gets hurt by Maxi less. I will say is that the Fiendsmith engine itself is better at playing into specifically Riseio. because like the Blue Eyes, I think the Blue Eyes' worst matchup is probably Riseio, because like the detonator is just very oppressive versus like the Blue Eye strategy. As you know, True Light popping your normal summons, so you can't link it into Spirit, and then you can't rely on your Blue Eyes and stuff like that. But the Fiendsmith engine trades much better into the Riseio cards than the Blue Eyes cards, especially because you're playing a lot of hand traps. So your Fiendsmith, your Riseio opponent is probably not ending on like the full board, like triple XDs like Baguska and Nekroz, or like they're doing the full Heraldic hand rip plus Protoss. Like they're probably not getting to that. They're probably getting on like some variation of like Detonator or Baguska pass, and maybe a Cross, maybe. And like the Fiendsmith deck cards are way better at playing into that than the Blue Eyes cards. So that's like one advantage of the Primite Fiendsmith, which is like, you know, its ability to play into Riseio. But other than that, for the most part, I think I would prefer playing Blue Eyes against almost every other matchup over Primite Fiendsmith, except for exactly Riseio. So depending on how common Riseio is, that might determine it. But for the most part, I think that the Blue Eyes is like the better version of the Primite Fiendsmith, unfortunately, because I really like the Primite Fiendsmith deck. I did get the Master 1 with it last season too, but yeah. Next is these cards that like these decks that seemingly people have forgotten, like especially Yubel. Yubel it has fallen. The Yubel fall off needs to be studied, because like this deck is like nowhere to be seen. It was nowhere to be seen. It was like barely seen during its peak, when it was like its strongest, during like Fiendsmith like Snake Eyes formats, and then this deck has just never been like the top deck or like the top 2 deck, so people have just like ignored it for the most part. It's like a worse version of the top decks, and then like, you know, Malice came around, and then this deck is like, it doesn't have a great matchup in the Malice. Like, I don't know, Yubel Fiendsmith, I feel like if I'm going second and my opponent normal summons like Samsara G Lotus, I'm still going to be a bit tilted, because it means that they're probably going to play through 2 or 3 hand traps, unless those hand traps are mulch armies. So like the mulch armies are like pretty, you know, there are quite a. The one thing of Yubel is that on top of like the bricks that it plays, and on top of being like kind of mediocre going second, it's really bad into the popular Floodgate hand traps that people are playing. Like specifically in Max C, like obviously that's obvious, but like Mulch Army, this deck does not appreciate getting Mulch Armied. Any of the Mulch Armies. I don't think it likes getting Peruliad. It doesn't like getting Fool Lost. It also does not like Meows might be Meows might be tolerable if it's just Meows by itself, but ain't nobody running Meows as their only Mulch Army. Like this ain't Worlds, okay? The people aren't playing anti-Malice like that hard, okay? But yeah, it's like really by power level, I kind of want to put Yubel in tier 3, but by representation, it should be down here, because not a goddamn person is playing Yubel. Like there are as many people playing fucking like Jirax and 6 Samurai as they're playing Yubel right now. It's yeah, it's. At the very least, with White Force. White Force is like the different version of Yubel, in the fact I think White Force, for the most part, like I mean, it's the same kind of deck, right? It goes first, it plays through most non-Floodgate hand traps pretty easily, ends on a pretty unbreakable board, kind of mediocre going second, and has a modest, like it has an okay amount of room for non-engine. Like it's not like Riseio or Malice levels, and it's not like Blue Eyes levels of hand traps, but it's certainly more than like Memento, and like it's probably like close to on par with like the other Cybers decks like Ignister and Mathmech. So like it's okay. It's not hopeless going second, and it's unlike Yubel, I think it has less bricks, but also it's just better into Charmies in particular and Maxi, because like at the very least you do have a play. Like if you get Maxi, if you get Charmied, especially if people are dropping them in the draw phase to play around tactics, then you can just you know, Sylvie add like woes and then end on woes pass for like with 0 to 1 draw, which is like that's fine. That's like an interruption for like minimal maxi draws. That's something. That's more than Yubel does. So like yeah, it's probably better than Yubel. I also there's like ain't nobody playing this deck, but yeah, I actually don't know where to put White Force. If we get the White Force support, you know, maybe next pack Copium, then this deck might shoot up. Like I don't know. Like there's definitely more people playing White Forest I've seen than playing Yubel. Also, you can combine the Magistus cards with the White Forest cards, because the White Forest are spellcasters. So like the Magistus cards being generic spellcaster support is actually decent for it. Yeah. Like actually, like I think there's like notable advantages that White Forest has over Yubel to put it up here. So yeah. Next, Melodious. So like the only reason I want to mention Melodious is that I think Melodious has like low-key the best hand trap lineup in the game, because it has the ability to run Dominus Purge, which like again is one of the few hand traps that feel good against both Malice and Riseio. Being another trap card you can use to negate what's it called? Negate dual drive means that even if they have access to cross, you can still negate the dual drive, which is a big deal. And like it obviously combined with other hand traps, combined with imperm, you can high roll and even pop cards. Against Malice, it's being a trap card. The best Ash targets are only available after your opponent makes an Appaloosa, which is kind of why Ash kind of sucks in the Malice matchup. But Purge, being an Ash Blossom that can't be negated by Appaloosa, it's it's a lot better. It's a lot more versatile. And then it also has Herald the Orange Blight, which is also a very strong. It's a very strong hand trap. It's like better effect veiler, better imperm, and it also like Lancia is a fairy, so like even in matchups where Lancia is dead against or Lancia is bad against, you can pitch Lancia for like Herald of the Orange Light because it's a fairy, and that still works, I think. So yeah, I like the hand trap line. That's about the only thing I like about Melodious, though. It's not great going second in this format. Like the thing is that the end board Melodious had, I'd seen some formats the end board was really strong. In this format, Arya is not that great because Malice has non-targeting banish. So like the entire protection of Arya, which is your opponent can't target your monsters and your opponent can't run them over by battle, and then if you combine it with like Elegy, your monster can't be destroyed. Malice doesn't give two shits about that because Malice just non-targeting banishes your stuff. So like your board is actually not that sticky. And yeah, going second, it's also like you don't care about Lancia going first, but going second, it's like the Brandon problem where if you get Lancia going second, your best card to play into boards is Etoile, which is like it banishes itself to bounce cards. If you can't banish it, if you get Lancia, you can't do that. So like, how are you ever breaking a board, even a half board from Melodious? So yeah. Also, they're fairies, so like they don't work with fucking the Magistus cards. So yeah, actually not. Yeah, it's niche is that it's the best deck that can run Herald and Purge. There might be one other deck that can run it, like I guess Madolche can technically run Purge and Herald, but like I think Melodious is at least better than Madolche. So, yeah. Whoa, Flu, what the hell are you doing here? Okay, so the real question is, what is the worst deck in this list? Is it Runic variants or is it Flu? Because yeah. We're in a Lancian format, so like playing the Lancian format with Flu. There's also Malice decks are playing Droll to be anti-Maxi, which is also anti-Enpen, or anti-Enpen. It's anti-Flu. Also, there's what is this? There's a Mulch Army. Okay, this deck doesn't care about Maxi or Fool Loss. What it does care about is Mulch Army and Perulia, which is being played because Perulia is good against. It's better against Malice before. In the past, like I think Perulia was actually really bad against Malice because if you just Perulia your Malice opponent, they would activate Goldsark or activate that field spell and then do their combo and give you 0 draws on a Perulia. Now with the backup against their stuff, it means that if you Perulia Malice players and if they want to access their backup engine, they have to give you 2 draws. So like, it actually does cut them off of something, but all it does is just make them play their deck like before, which was when I thought Perulia was not that great against it. Either way, Perulia has seen a non-zero amount of play, and Perulia also shits on Flu. So like these are probably something. Yeah, I think Flu is kind of bad. I think Flu is really bad. So yeah, and then next we have Fiendsmith Puppet and Dracoslayer. I want to like kind of mention these together because these are like the rogue versions of like Mermail and Momento of like the straight up going first decks that like try to basically pseudo FTK you or like actually FTK you going first. And like the thing is that these decks are a lot worse at going second than the aforementioned like Mermail and Memento, so like that's why they're down here. Dracoslayer still puts up, I think, the strongest board in the entire game by far. Like it's arguably better than the some FTKs. That's how stupid it is. And yeah, if you get Max Seed, you deck them out. So yeah, When you go second, don't worry about it. Don't worry about going second. Just when going first. Like there's a lot of decks I have included here that are like this too. They're like Plants or Infernoble that are decks that are just very oppressive, or like any Isolde warrior slot pile, 60 card slot pile that just resolves Isolde and like puts up 20 negates. Like these are like the same kinds of decks. Although Dracoslayer takes that to the extreme, in that Dracoslayer has like 5 rune for non-engine, and like the non-engine it plays is like fucking anti-max C. So it's like, and it's a pendulum deck. So pendulum deck is already has innate disadvantages going second. So yeah, this is like the most extreme coin flip deck in the game, Dracoslayer. Next is so interesting about Gimmick Puppet. Gimmick Puppet, people think of it as in the same way they think of like Dracoslayer, which is like an FDK deck that can't win going second and so on and so forth. I think it's like a Judeu's team, like Team Fala Galera, the Master Duel team from Latin America. Those guys figured out that Gimmick Puppet actually has a lot of tools for going second. So mainly like Condolence Puppet sending Biscuit and Terror Baby means that you play Board Breakers, which again, board breakers don't work against every deck, as I've mentioned a lot in this tier list, but like against some decks you do have a plan for going second. And like you can, if your opponent plays at all, if they have like any extra monster on the field, you can send Condolence Puppet essentially becomes a painful choice, and you can send Terror Baby and Bisbal so that your opponent cannot respond to your Gimmick Puppet effects, and they cannot target your Gimmick Puppet monsters. And on top of that, you have like a field spell which makes all your monsters unaffected by your opponent's monsters. So like it's like has some ways to actually play through going second against certain matchups, like say Momento, where it's like the Gimmick Puppet is actually very good at going second into Memento, because Memento's disruptions are played very poorly into the protection that the Gimmick Puppet monsters provide. That being said, Gimmick Puppet also gets hurt by Lancia. As stupid as that sounds, because if you get Lancia, you can't banish Terror Baby, and you can't banish Biscuit, which means that your opponent, you cannot get targeting protection, and you can't make your opponents unresponsible. You can't make your cards unresponsible. Your opponent will be able to respond to your monsters because you can't banish them. So like that's actually kind of rough. And also, this deck is low key kind of bad at FTK. Like I'm not gonna lie. Like there are hand traps people sometimes there are like hand traps people run that like just make it hard. Like stuff like against Malice, for example, specifically against Malice, because Malice is like the only deck that's still playing Bestials, but it is also the most played deck. So if you randomly play against the Malice deck that draws a Bestial versus you, it can be a bit rough. Also, like Droll is also kind of rough. Ash, the Ash, Imperm, those cards you're generally fine against, but cards like Imperm and like Valor and stuff like that are seeing less and less play. But like Dominus Impulse, for example, is a card that actually can hurt you quite a bit as well, because it bypasses a lot of the protection you have, because your rank up spell is not a Gimmick Puppet card, so they can still respond to that. It's not a monster, so it's still affected even if you have the field spell. Obviously, like Dominus Impulse doesn't target, so like you kind of just have to eat the Dominus Impulse as well. So like it has a bad matchup versus Malice. Like I'm spending too much time on this. I actually don't. The more I'm talking about Gimmick Puppet, the more I'm thinking like this deck is actually kind of ass. I'm not gonna lie. I actually don't like this deck at all. I'm being honest. Like, yeah. I also think that Dracoslayer is a bit high, because, there are decks that win consistently going first that also aren't hopeless going second. So, yeah, we'll put this right here behind the 5th best Riseio variant. Yeah. Then Labyrinth. So Labyrinth, I feel like it's a bit rough, like going second. Labyrinth, for some reason all the furniture are still at 2. Even if the furnitures were at 3, I'm not even sure if you would run the furnitures, because that kind of Labyrinth build was really like Labyrinth in general is slow, so like the furnitures don't make your deck fast enough to still compete with Malice, especially since it gives your Malice opponent actual good targets to White Binder banished. Also, like, you have like the problem of like, I think a lot of back row decks kind of struggle playing into Riseio a lot of times as well. And going first, it's like obviously you want to go first because you're playing a trap deck, but even if you're playing like the heavy trap build, we had the discussion about like floodgates being inconsistent in this format. Even the lingering non-continuous floodgates, like stuff like D barrier. D barrier is obviously only it's not good against Maz, it's only good against Riseio, for example. So it's yeah, I've noticed like the matchup like the Labyrinth being underpowered like for a while now, so it hasn't really done much either. Like I haven't seen much people have success with a different Labyrinth build or like with specific traps that make it really like a desirable deck right now. So I'll put it here. Like there's a possibility that we're all missing something. Like for example, maybe Simul Archfiends is like a card to consider to play as well. But yeah, in general, I don't really I'm not really impressed with Labyrinth right now. Voiceless Voice. So Voiceless Voice, I think, is actually low key one of the best decks at going first in this meta, specifically because Saravis is just really good this format. Like Saravis is insane versus both Riseio and Malice. It's actually crazy how good it is, because again Malice Link monsters, if you just go Saravis and negate their Link monster, like I don't know, negate their White Minder, negate their what's it called, red ransom, negate any of those cards, it's actually quite brutal, because like they get banished, but like because they were never special summoned properly, they don't come back, and then it's like you can summon multiple Saravis a turn. It's kind of crazy. Like it's actually very difficult for Malice to play through. And also like for Riseio, Riseio's the same way, because I mean you can just Saravis their Link, their Xyz monsters, and also they can't exit because you have barrier up. If you have barrier up, they cannot target your Saravis. So the best they can do is send aggregator, negate your barrier, and they still can't beat like double Saravis without blessing. So like I actually like Voiceless Voice going first, and it like plays around hand traps pretty well, especially like a lot of the hand traps people are playing right now. Okay, so like Malice does have some good hand traps versus you. Like for example, Dominance Impulse can be okay, but a lot of times Dominance Impulse is also not sufficient, because Dominance Impulse, you can play around Impulse just by not summoning a monster, and if you don't summon a monster and if you don't have barrier on field, then they can't Dominance Impulse because you control no cards, so they can't Impulse your Saphira Engrave, and that means that the only thing they can Impulse is like the low coming back, and like if they do that, you can just Skull Guardian search a second low and normal summon the low anyways. Then like you're fine. Lancia, it turns off your Saphira, but it doesn't turn. You can still just use the ritual spell, because you play as many copies of pre-prep as you do Saphira, so like you have an equal chance of just opening the ritual spell anyways, so to be able to ritual summon through a Lancia as well. And like yeah, Troll hurts a little bit. Troll can hurt a little bit. Mulch armies absolutely do absolutely jack shit. Maxi is like an upstart goblin. Fool Loss is a hand loop. You just lost a card in your hand if you activate Fool Loss versus Voiceless Voice. And Perulia also, like you can play around Perulia by just sacking low from hand instead of normal summoning it. That way it summons back from the grave. And like Meows can only really ever get you one draw off because of the low coming back, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, this deck's pretty resilient going first. Going second, it's obviously like it has flaws. Like it can run Purge. Purge is a good card. It doesn't have that much room. It doesn't have the most room for hand traps though. So like it kind of struggles there. Nadir Servant is a cool card, but it's not enough by itself to help you go in second, even though it is pretty decent. I like Voiceless Voice. There are worse decks, but like, yeah. I mean, this deck has a reliable way to win going first. So like that's more than can be said about a lot of decks, and it's like it has the quality of hand traps to run to help it win going second, but it doesn't have like the quantity, I guess. But yeah, it's just, this for like a tier 3 deck. This is like about as good as you can get for like a ritual deck in this format. So yeah. Next we have like the Snake Eyes deck. So we have pure Snake Eyes and Fire King Snake Eyes, which yeah, but by pure Snake Eyes I mean Fiendsmith, Millennium, Snake Eyes in brackets because there's like 2 Snake Eyes cards. It's like you cannot play pure Snake Eyes. I meant pure I meant Fiendsmith Millennium Snake Eyes with like Snake Eyes Ash and Snake Eyes Poplar. It's like the only Snake Eyes card. Maybe a Birch and that's it. But yeah, so Snake Eye Fire King, it has some advantages. It can run Dominus Impulse, which is good against Malice. It's a zombie vampire abuser. So these are the zombie vampire abusers, and like zombie vampire can be really good in this format if you're playing against Malice, because you just mill 4 and then you see your opponent is playing Malice, and then you mill a Lancia, and if you mill a Lancia with zombie vampire, the game's over. You also have additional advantage because you're playing Snake Eyes, where if you mill a Lancia and you need an extra extender, or like you mill something better to summon out the zombie vampire, that's fine. You just go Flame Birch, scale, or place your own Lancia, and then summon Lancia on your opponent's turn, and then that's still just as good. So like, you have a good way to like beat Malice going first. And finally enough, like a lot of this, like the Snake Eyes decks that the winning Worlds team played was basically anti-Malice, which is like running like his entire strategy was just playing Lancia and like Chaos Hunter and like stuff like that, and then trying to hit those cards off of the Flamberge or off of the Zombie Vampire, or draw them off Saryuja, I guess. And yeah, that's a decent strategy. The problem is that these decks are also quite not good playing into boards. They do have a decent amount room for non-engine, so like that's fine, but Snake Eyes Fire King does not have enough room for non-engine room for my liking. And a lot of people might say, well, why don't you cut the Snake Eyes cards and run like the pure Fire King, which pure Fire King has some consistency issues. It's also like, it still doesn't like fix the Riseio matchup, because especially Detonator, because you would think that that Fire King monsters don't mind getting popped by Detonator, which is like true, but like that's not what you care about, getting popped by Detonator. What you really care about getting popped by Detonator is your Fire King Island and your Fire King Sanctuary, which don't have the protection. Like if you activate Sanctuary, they just Detonator pop your Sanctuary, and then you don't even get access to the island. And if you have a naked island by itself and no Sanctuary protection, that doesn't do that much good. They just pop your Fire King Island whenever you do something, and then you lose your entire board. Like that's still the Rising matchup is still a drag, and then the Malice matchup is also like a drag, because playing a graveyard focused deck into like a Malice board with white binders all over the place is like not really ideal. But yeah, and the Riseio matchup for Millennium Fiendsmith Snake Eyes is also not great, because the Millennium cards are not good into Riseio, they're not good into Detonator, so it's yeah, the Riseio is like kind of a tough matchup for you to play into with engine. And you do have more room. I guess you have more room for non-engine in the Millennium Fiendsmith Snake Eyes, because like you have less engine to run. Like all your cards are hit, but that points out another issue. Like you're kind of exposed. You're kind of weak to Max Z plus a Charmy. Fire King doesn't actually mind Fool Loss too much, although it does mind Perulia quite a bit. It also minds Meows quite a little bit more, and then Fool Loss is like pretty good against Millennium and Fiendsmith engines, like let alone the Snake Eyes cards. Yeah, overall, like sometimes there's consistency issues with these decks too, because of the sheer amount of hits that the Snake Eye engine has. Like you can't escape the fact that sometimes you just don't draw engine, which is like kind of a that's going to cost you some win rate somewhere. So well, I'll put them here. It's hard to say, because like someone did the madman, some madman did get top 10 in a rated with fucking Millennium Fiendsmith Snake Eyes, like they're in Malice format, which is like crazy to me. But overall, like that's like 1 out of 10 slots. Like that's generally like the representation you would expect from like Snake Eyes decks as like the best case scenario. So yeah, I'll keep them here out, because these are like these decks. I think these Snake Eyes decks could possibly have like the biggest variance, like the biggest range that they could be on a tier list, because they're not a lot of people are playing these, and these Snake Eyes cards are still good. There's just not much being explored with these cards, because like I mean generally like they're still going to be worse than like you know. So next we got some Lancia collateral damage coming up next. So we have Ritual Beast, which boy, Ritual Beast is man, it does not appreciate the cards people are running now. Lancia against Ritual Beast, forget about it. That's a go next right there. Malcharmies, Fool Loss, bad. You special summon. You literally special summon the same fucking Candlehawk like 20 fucking times. Perulia also not great because you're just summoning. You're adding cards to hand to normal summon, which is you're giving your opponent 2-3 draws even not the Perulia. Meows. His deck gets this deck summons from banish. So like this deck is like has all the weaknesses of Malice. Like everything Malice is weak to, just multiply that by 1,000 for fucking Ritual Beast. Because it's not like Ritual Beast has a backup Nister to play under Lancia. Like this is like a hard pass to Lancia. It's kind of unfortunate, not gonna lie. Although at the same time, like if this deck gets to play, all it's gonna probably do right now is try to fucking Protoss you. So I don't know. Maybe I don't know if that's what people want, but yeah. Also, Dominus Impulse being played a lot. Dominus Impulse also fucking like sucks. It's like just another it's another Ash Blossom essentially, which Ash is also good against you. Did I mention Dominus Impulse against the Branded? I think maybe I feel like I haven't, but like that's another reason why Branded is like it's like the main decks are playing Lancia obviously, but also the best deck is playing Impulse, and Impulse is like just another copy of Ash versus Brandon that you cannot even cross out or call it by, so like it's even worse. Like it's actually very brutal for Brandon, and that's the same way with Ritual Beast, except Ritual Beast is also weak to literally every other semi-popular floodgate handshot being played right now. Like it's just really hard to actually even play Ritual Beast because like all these Malcharmies, these fucking Lancias, these Dominus Impulses are just fucking shutting you down for being able to play the game. Yeah, and then a deck that's not as bad into all that because it's only Lancia. It's only Lancia that's Cristron struggles against. At the same time, that is a big deal. Like being a deck decks that lose as hard to Lancia as Malice does in Malice format is like not a good thing because it means that you're losing to Lancia just as much, but you're also playing the worst decks when you're not getting Lancia. So it's like, yeah, at least Cristron, it doesn't mind Charmies as much as like Ritual Beast does, and it can play through Impulse a little bit. It's just the Lancia, man. Like you gotta avoid getting Lancia that's playing while playing Cristron. That's some Pack like Pack, right? Pack brought the Smigers to Paris. He brought Cristron, and it let him down in the finals against Malice. I have a feeling that's kind of how I feel like the matchup will go right now as well. I think Malice is like better than Cristron, and like Malice is also like better against Lancia than Cristron. So like, yeah, this deck's okay. It's also like it's also kind of bad into Riseio. I'm not gonna lie, because this deck plays the Millennium cards, which like obviously are really bad into. They're bad into the Riseio matchup as well. So, yeah, it'll be a tier 3 deck. I think it's solid. It's gonna be nowhere near as good as it was last DC. Last DC, this was in the World's Championship qualifiers. My Cristron's was the second best deck and I think it wasn't even really close because like it had the same number of tops as Blue Eyes, but Cristron's had way more in the top 10 and actually won the damn thing. And I would be shocked if I see multiple Cristrons in the top 100 in this Duelist Cup now. So, yeah, that's... next is Sprite. So Sprite is actually... You can build Sprite in a way that beats Malice, because Sprite has access to Mannequin Cat, so you can Mannequin Cat... when your opponent summons any Malice monster, you Mannequin Cat, summon Chaos Hunter from your deck, summon Chaos Hunter under the Sprite Elf, so they can't target the Chaos Hunter. So even if they play Nightmare Cerberus, they can't nail it with Nightmare Cerberus. That's actually, you pretty much win the game almost every time you do that versus Malice. And like, yeah, even if you get Max Seed, which normally it does suck. I'm not gonna lie, like I'm not gonna try sugarcoat it. Getting fucking Malcharmied, like Perulia or Fool Loss, especially Fool Loss or Max Seed as Sprite sucks. But like theoretically, you can make like Mannequin Cat pass, and your opponent is playing Malice. they try to play the game, and then you chaos under them, and then you can like potentially get into a grinding from there. Like it's something. It's okay. Like this deck can have a decent Malice matchup. It also like doesn't care about banish and stuff. It also like this deck just OTKs your opponent going second. So like that's the thing. You don't get to play in grind games where you just get out grinded by Malice if you just end the game immediately. Riseio, it's a bit of a tougher matchup. Not gonna lie. Especially if you're playing Dominance Impulse for Malice. Dominance Impulse is like not as good versus Riseio, and like there isn't the floodgate target to summon off Banking Cat is not as good as Chaos Hunter for Riseio. Like you have Christia, which is kind of a brick, and it kind of also low-key turns your own deck off if you can't OTK them. And like there's a like Thunder King Raiho, which is like nowhere near as game ending against Riseio as Chaos Hunter is versus Malice. And like if you're not playing the Dominance Impulse and like you're playing like I don't know Millennium cards like Judeu did in the World Championships, like then that makes your Riseio matchup even worse. So it's like Sprite, there's like Sprite is like a viable deck that you can build in a way that have success versus Malice, but it's hard to have success versus if you build specifically for Malice and your like main game plan is trying to Mannequin Cat a fucking Chaos Hunter. Obviously, against every other matchup, you're gonna suffer because you're tailoring your end board versus Malice. When that's other decks, obviously you're not playing even more floodgates to summon off Mannequin Cat. You're not gonna run 3 bricks just to summon off the Mannequin Cat. That sounds quite bad, but yeah, it's a decent option if you specifically want to play anti-Malice. Like their Sprite is one of the better options to just specifically be anti-Malice. That's why it was considered for Worlds, but in a matchup where only like maybe even half or like less than half your matchups are actually Malice, and you have to play against other decks, then it's still up in the air whether Sprite is actually that good. But yeah, I'll put it here just because of the prevalence of Malice. But yeah, this is like sort of roughly my tier list. Let's see if there's like anything egregiously wrong that I see here. Nothing too egregious here. So let me know like if there's anything that you disagree with. Obviously, please feel free to type a comment and just like let me have it. Like tell me how stupid I am. Tell me what decks I've missed. Let's get that engagement up, baby. And yeah, hopefully you guys playing the Duelist Cup. I hope everyone, like regardless of if you're playing Stage 2 or not, I hope everyone gets all their gems, at least gets all the gems from the event, even if this format kind of sucks, and even if you don't want to play this format, at least get the free stuff and like save your gems for the next pack. Hopefully we'll be in a format after the next ban list where Master Duel will be in a better spot. Copium.